That's a yes or no question, Mr. Lefelt. Do you? Is that your perception? You're sitting next to a young woman who received a brain injury from a biological male. Is it safe to compete against biological males? Yes or no, Mr. Lefelt?
What happened to Miss?
Yes or no?
What happened to Miss McNab?
I'll take that as a no. Mr. Lefelt, do you think forcing a woman to change in front of a man in a locker room is abusive? Yes or no?
Congresswoman, I'm not sure.
Do you want your daughter to change in front of biological men in locker rooms? Yes or no?
My daughter isn't really something that should be part of this hearing,
if you're not a quick no on that, we're going to take that as a no.
Hello, Patriots. Welcome back to Signal 76, where we deliver the truth that mainstream media won't tell you. Today, we're diving deep into a congressional hearing that perfectly demonstrates why we need strong conservative leadership in Washington. We're witnessing the battle for the soul of women's sports, Title IX protections, and the fundamental rights of our daughters and granddaughters to compete safely and fairly. Before we get started, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is growing because patriots like you are hungry for the truth. Smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and most importantly, watch this entire video because what I'm about to reveal will shock you about how the left is systematically destroying women's athletics in America.
We will now begin the 5-minute question period of the hearing. I would like to remind the members that Mr. Lefelt is here under a duly issued subpoena to answer questions at today's hearing after refusing to appear voluntarily. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions. No one is here today to harm transgenders. We are here to defend girls and women, and we are here to defend Title IX and to uphold President Trump's executive order that all biological males stay out of girls' and women's sports. Here displayed behind me is the post that Mr. Lefelt put up. Mr. Lefelt came in here today saying that this is game day. You're right, Mr. Lefelt, this is game day. Under the Ted Stevens Act, USA Fencing and other national governing bodies that are authorized to oversee individual sports on a national level have a certain obligation. One such duty is to provide support and encouragement for participation by women, where separate programs for male and female athletes are conducted on a national basis. Another statutory duty is to promote a safe environment in sports that is free from abuse of any amateur athlete, including emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Mr. Lefelt, as the board chair of USA Fencing, surely you are aware of these legal requirements. That means you believe that forcing a woman to compete against a biological man promotes a safe environment that is free from emotional abuse. Is that correct?
One moment. A point of order, please,
You're not. Okay,
Madam Chair, I have a point of order. The document that you have up behind you is a misrepresentation of the actual post. It appears that you're trying to misrepresent a witness here who you use subpoena powers against.
This is not, Ms. Stansbury. Ms. Stansbury, this is not a point of order.
The actual picture.
Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized. Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized. Ms. Stansbury, you are not recognized.
Madam Chairwoman,
you are not. This is not a point of order, Ms. Stansbury. This is not a point of order.
What this committee does, you are misrepresenting the witnesses. You are misrepresenting policy. You are misrepresenting.
Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized. You're not recognized. That's not a point of order. You're abusing the rules of this committee. This is the post of Mr. Lefelt that he posted himself on his own social media. And that's exactly why we have it displayed here today, because Mr. Lefelt believes that he can take away the opportunities for women to compete in USA Fencing, and he thinks this is game day to defend biological men. Now, we're going to return to my time as chair of this committee. Ms. Turner, refusing to compete against a man cost you a 12-month probation. Did you feel you were in a safe environment, free from abuse, when you were told you must compete against a man in an all-out competition?
No.
No, that wasn't free from emotional abuse. Ms. McNab, when a biological man spiked a ball into your head, were you free from physical or emotional abuse?
I was not.
Ms. McNab, did you feel you were placed in a safe environment when you faced a biological male in a girls' volleyball game?
No, I did not feel safe.
Ms. Turner, were you safe when you were forced to go up against a biological male in your sport?
No, I was not.
Mr. Lefelt, do you think your perception of what constitutes a safe environment for women is more valid than that of a woman testifying here today?
Congresswoman, thank you for your question. There was a study that was published in 2010 regarding the safety of sports in the Olympic movement. There were 51 sports that were assessed as part of that study.
That's a yes or no question, Mr. Lefelt. Do you is that your perception? You're sitting next to a young woman who received a brain injury from a biological male. Is it safe to compete against biological males? Yes or no, Mr. Lefelt?
What happened to Ms.
Yes or no?
What happened to Ms. McNab
I'll take that as a no. Mr. Lefelt, do you think forcing a woman to change in front of a man in a locker room is abusive? Yes or no?
Congresswoman, I'm not sure I
Do
follow
you
the
want
question.
your daughter to change in front of biological men in locker rooms? Yes or no?
My daughter isn't really something that should be part of this hearing, respectfully.
If you're not a quick no on that, we're going to take that as a no. We're going to switch gears to USA Fencing site selection policy. You're the chair of USA Fencing. You should be familiar. Mr. Lefelt, what does abortion have to do with fencing?
Congresswoman, that policy was passed before I got on the board. However, when
you're the chair of the board now, what does abortion have to do with fencing, Mr. Lefelt?
I'm on the board, you're correct, and I offered an amendment to that policy back in December, Congresswoman, that allowed for more flexibility at the city level.
To get an abortion while you're at fencing competitions?
And it also allowed for better convenience. So we enhanced the policy
more
under my
convenience to
leadership on the
Planned
board.
Parenthood centers. Mr. Lefelt, why does USA Fencing states abortion policies and LGBTQ policies in its site selection process to determine where tournaments are held? That's part of your site selection process, is abortion availability and states and cities that are friendly to LGBTQ policies. How is that part of USA Fencing?
Congresswoman, we try to have tournaments in sites that are safe for all of our members, period.
So you don't think red states are safe for fencing athletes?
Red states are absolutely safe, and we regularly host tournaments there, including Texas, Ohio, Missouri.
No, your site selection policies are based on abortion availability and LGBTQ availability, not on fencing, not on your sport. Now let's go a little bit further with this.
Madam Chairwoman, your time has expired.
You're not recognized, Ms. Crockett. Mr. Lefelt, you wrote a blog post where you said that one day your daughter
Madam Chair, on a point of order.
This is my time, and I'm the chair of the committee.
No, that was your time. Your time is over, and now we're asking,
The chair has discretion to assign time.
I've lost
and you know
time.
it, sir.
I have lost time.
as long as we have that understanding, that's fine.
I've lost time.
I yield 2.5 minutes to the chair lady.
Mr. Lefelt, you wrote a blog post where you said that one day your daughter might compete against a transgender woman, a biological man. You said that if she did, you might win or she might lose. But whatever the result, you hope she doesn't care about the outcome, because the important thing is that both she and her opponent enjoy the match. That's what you wrote in your little trans manifesto. But you came here today to win. And you came here today to defeat women in their own sport. So as you stand here before this committee today, you are a man that would tell your daughter to lose and enjoy it to a biological man. My time has expired, and with that, I recognize Ms. Stansbury to defend all the trans.
Point of order. Out of curiosity, is the chairwoman allowed to editorialize before every speaker on the Democratic side speaks, or is that part of her time, which we know that she went over?
It's not a point of order. You're taking Ms. Stansbury's time. I know you're trying to be chair of oversight, but Ms. Stansbury is the ranking member.
Chair would be better on this side. I do agree with that.
It's Ms. Stansbury's time.
This hearing featuring USA Fencing Board Chair Mr. Lefelt is a masterclass in how conservative lawmakers are fighting back against the radical transgender agenda that's infiltrating every aspect of American sports. What we witnessed here is nothing short of a political and cultural battleground where common sense met ideological extremism head-on. Let me paint the picture for you. Mr. Lefelt, the board chair of USA Fencing, had to be subpoenaed to appear before Congress. Think about that for a moment. This man, who holds a position of authority over American athletes, refused to voluntarily testify about policies that directly impact the safety and fairness of women's sports. That alone should tell you everything you need to know about his priorities and agenda. The hearing opened with the chairwoman making it crystal clear what this was about. This wasn't an attack on transgender individuals as people, but a defense of biological women and girls who have worked their entire lives to excel in their chosen sports. These female athletes have dedicated countless hours, made tremendous sacrifices, and poured their hearts into achieving excellence, only to be told they must now compete against biological males who possess inherent physical advantages. When the chairwoman displayed Mr. Lefelt's social media post, we saw his true colors. This man actually posted that this issue was game day for him. Game day. As if the destruction of women's sports fairness is some kind of sport to him. This cavalier attitude toward the systematic dismantling of Title IX protections is exactly what we're fighting against in this country. The Ted Stevens Act requires USA Fencing and other national governing bodies to provide support and encouragement for women's participation in sports and to promote safe environments free from abuse. These aren't suggestions, these are legal requirements. Yet Mr. Lefelt seemed completely disconnected from these basic obligations when pressed by the chairwoman. The most powerful moments of this hearing came when we heard directly from the female athletes who have been impacted by these destructive policies. Miss Turner, a brave young woman who refused to compete against a biological male, was placed on a 12-month probation for standing up for fairness. Let that sink in. A female athlete was punished for defending the integrity of women's sports. This is the America we're living in under liberal policies. Miss McNab's testimony was even more disturbing. She described being physically injured when a biological male spiked a volleyball into her head during competition. This young woman suffered actual physical harm because administrators prioritized political correctness over athlete safety. When asked if she felt safe competing against biological males, her answer was a clear and resounding no. These aren't abstract policy debates happening in Washington boardrooms. These are real consequences affecting real American women and girls. Every time we allow biological males to compete in women's sports, we're telling our daughters that their safety, their opportunities, and their achievements don't matter as much as appeasing radical activists. Mr. Lefelt's responses throughout this hearing were absolutely telling. When directly asked whether his perception of what constitutes a safe environment for women was more valid than that of the women testifying, he couldn't give a straight answer. Instead, he tried to deflect with irrelevant studies from 2010. This is classic liberal strategy, deflect and obfuscate when confronted with inconvenient truths. The chairwoman pressed him with simple yes or no questions that any reasonable person could answer immediately. Do you think forcing a woman to change in front of a man in a locker room is abusive? He couldn't even answer that basic question about protecting women's privacy and dignity. When asked if he wanted his own daughter changing in front of biological men in locker rooms, he tried to claim his daughter wasn't relevant to the discussion. Incredible. His own daughter isn't relevant when discussing policies that could directly affect her safety and privacy. But the hearing revealed something even more disturbing about USA Fencing's operations under Mr. Lefelt's leadership. The organization has incorporated abortion availability and LGBTQ policies into their site selection process for tournaments. Think about that. A fencing organization is making decisions about where to hold sporting events based on abortion access and LGBT activism rather than what's best for the sport of fencing itself. When pressed about why abortion has anything to do with fencing, Mr. Lefelt couldn't provide a coherent explanation. He mentioned enhancing policies to include Planned Parenthood centers for convenience. Convenience. As if promoting abortion access is somehow essential to the sport of fencing. This is how the radical left infiltrates every institution in America by slowly incorporating their social agenda into organizations that should be focused on their core mission. The revelation that USA Fencing considers whether states are LGBTQ friendly when selecting tournament sites is particularly troubling. This essentially means they're discriminating against conservative states that maintain traditional values and common sense policies about biological sex. Mr. Lefelt claimed they try to have tournaments in sites that are safe for all members. But when pressed about whether red states are safe, he had to admit they regularly host tournaments in places like Texas and Ohio. This exposes the fundamental dishonesty of their position. If red states are safe enough to regularly host tournaments, then why does their official policy discriminate against them? It's because this isn't really about safety. It's about advancing a political agenda and punishing states that refuse to bow to leftist orthodoxy. The most revealing moment came when the chairwoman referenced Mr. Lefelt's blog post about his own daughter potentially competing against a transgender athlete. In his own words, he wrote that if his daughter competed against a biological male, she might win or lose, but the important thing was that she shouldn't care about the outcome as long as both competitors enjoyed the match. This perfectly encapsulates the liberal mindset that's destroying competitive sports in America. According to Mr. Lefelt, his own daughter should be happy to lose to a biological male as long as everyone is fun. This participation trophy mentality, combined with biological male advantages, is a recipe for the complete destruction of women's competitive athletics. The chairwoman's response was perfect. She pointed out the fundamental contradiction in his position. He came to this hearing to win, to defend his policies and defeat the conservative opposition, yet he would tell his own daughter to lose gracefully to a biological male and just enjoy the experience. This hypocrisy is exactly what we expect from liberal activists who demand others accept what they themselves would never tolerate. Throughout this hearing, we saw classic liberal tactics on full display. When confronted with clear evidence and straightforward questions, they deflect, obfuscate, and try to change the subject. When pressed for yes or no answers, they launch into irrelevant tangents about studies and policies that don't address the fundamental issues at hand. We also witnessed the usual Democratic disruption tactics. Multiple interruptions, frivolous points of order, and attempts to derail the proceedings when the questioning became uncomfortable for their position. This is standard operating procedure for Democrats when they can't defend their policies on merits. The broader implications of this hearing extend far beyond fencing or even sports in general. This is about the systematic erosion of women's rights under the guise of transgender activism. Every institution that capitulates to these demands is contributing to the destruction of sex-based protections that women fought decades to establish. Title IX was groundbreaking legislation that opened doors for millions of American women and girls to participate in athletics and receive equal educational opportunities. Now we're watching that progress being systematically dismantled by people who claim to be advancing civil rights while actually destroying them. The safety concerns raised by the female athletes in this hearing cannot be overstated. Ms. McNab's head injury from a biological male competitor is not an isolated incident. We're seeing injuries across multiple sports as biological males with greater size, strength, and bone density compete against biological females. This isn't about being anti-transgender. It's about acknowledging basic biological reality and protecting female athletes. The privacy violations are equally serious. Forcing young women to change clothes and shower in the presence of biological males violates their fundamental right to privacy and dignity. No amount of political correctness can change the fact that this makes many women and girls profoundly uncomfortable and potentially unsafe. Mr. Lefelt's inability to give clear answers about these basic concerns shows how detached these administrators have become from the athletes they're supposed to serve. They're more concerned with advancing social justice narratives than protecting the women and girls who depend on them for leadership and advocacy. The site selection policy revelations demonstrate how far-reaching this ideological capture has become. USA Fencing isn't just making decisions about transgender participation. They're actively discriminating against entire states based on political considerations that have nothing to do with the sport itself. This is a clear example of how leftist activism infiltrates and corrupts institutions from within. Conservative states that maintain traditional values and common sense policies about biological sex are being punished economically and competitively by organizations that should be politically neutral. This represents a form of economic warfare against red states and their values. The abortion component of their site selection criteria is particularly egregious. There is absolutely no logical connection between abortion access and fencing competitions. This policy exists solely to advance Planned Parenthood's agenda and punish states that protect unborn life. It's political activism masquerading as athlete welfare. What we're witnessing is the complete politicization of American athletics. Sports organizations that should be focused on competition, fairness, and athlete welfare are instead becoming vehicles for advancing radical social agendas. This corruption of purpose ultimately hurts everyone involved in these sports. The female athletes who testified in this hearing are heroes. They're standing up for fairness and safety despite facing punishment and social pressure for doing so. Ms. Turner's 12-month probation for refusing to compete against a biological male is a badge of honor that demonstrates her commitment to principle over convenience. These young women understand what's at stake in ways that the adults making these policies apparently don't. They see their opportunities being diminished, their safety being compromised, and their achievements being devalued, all in service of an ideology that prioritizes political messaging over their well-being. The fact that Mr. Lefelt had to be subpoenaed to appear before Congress speaks volumes about the accountability crisis in American sports administration. These officials are making decisions that profoundly impact athletes' lives while avoiding oversight and refusing to answer basic questions about their policies. This hearing represents exactly the kind of congressional oversight we need more of. Conservative lawmakers are finally holding these administrators accountable for policies that harm women and girls while advancing radical agendas. The American people deserve to know how their sports organizations are being run and what values are driving these decisions. President Trump's executive order requiring biological males to stay out of women's sports provides the federal leadership necessary to restore sanity to this issue. This isn't about discrimination. It's about maintaining the biological basis for sex-separated athletics that has always been fundamental to competitive fairness. The Ted Stevens Act requirements mentioned in this hearing provide a legal framework for challenging these destructive policies. Organizations like USA Fencing have statutory obligations to support women's participation and maintain safe environments. When they fail to meet these obligations, they should face consequences. Moving forward, we need continued congressional oversight of sports organizations that receive federal funding or recognition. These administrators should not be allowed to hide behind bureaucratic procedures while implementing policies that harm American athletes. We also need more athletes like Ms. Turner and Ms. McNab to speak out about their experiences. Their voices carry more weight than any administrator or activist because they're the ones actually competing and living with the consequences of these policies. State-level legislation protecting women's sports is also crucial. Red states that pass clear, common-sense laws about biological sex in athletics are providing the leadership that federal administrators have failed to demonstrate. Parents and athletes need to continue applying pressure through school boards, athletic departments, and sports organizations. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and sustained pressure from concerned Americans can force changes in these policies. This hearing also demonstrates the importance of supporting conservative candidates who will stand up for women's rights and athletic fairness. The lawmakers questioning Mr. Lefelt showed exactly the kind of principled leadership we need more of in Washington. The broader cultural battle over transgender ideology extends far beyond sports. But athletics provides a clear and compelling example of how radical policies harm real people. Every parent with a daughter in sports can understand the unfairness and danger of forcing biological females to compete against biological males. This issue also reveals the intellectual bankruptcy of modern liberalism. When pressed for basic answers about safety and fairness, advocates for these policies can't provide coherent responses. They rely on emotional manipulation and accusations of bigotry because they can't defend their positions on the merits. The mainstream media's coverage of issues like this consistently favors transgender activists over female athletes. They frame opposition to biological males in women's sports as anti-transgender hatred rather than pro-woman advocacy. This biased coverage makes congressional hearings like this one even more important for getting the truth out to the American people. Social media platforms also consistently censor and suppress content that questions transgender orthodoxy, making independent channels like this one crucial for maintaining open dialogue about these issues. That's why your support through subscriptions, likes, and shares is so important to keeping these conversations alive. The international implications of American policies on this issue are also significant. As the United States abandons biological reality in athletics, we're setting a precedent that other nations may follow, potentially corrupting international competition as well. Olympic and international competition could become meaningless if biological males are allowed to compete in women's categories. The records and achievements that female athletes have worked generations to establish could be systematically erased by competitors with inherent biological advantages. This hearing represents a crucial moment in the fight to preserve women's sports and Title IX protections. The clear contrast between conservative lawmakers asking tough questions and liberal administrators avoiding accountability perfectly illustrates the stakes in this battle. Patriots, this is why elections matter. This is why we need to support candidates who will stand up for common sense, biological reality, and the rights of women and girls. The future of competitive athletics in America depends on our willingness to fight for these principles. The young women who testified in this hearing deserve our support and admiration. They're fighting for their rights and the rights of future generations of female athletes. Their courage in the face of institutional pressure and social media attacks shows the kind of character we need more of in America. Mr. Lefelt's performance in this hearing should be disqualifying for any leadership position in American athletics. His inability to answer basic questions about safety, his incorporation of abortion politics into fencing decisions, and his cavalier attitude toward women's concerns demonstrate a fundamental unfitness for the responsibilities he holds. The fact that USA Fencing had to be dragged before Congress to answer these questions shows how far removed these organizations have become from accountability to the American people. This kind of congressional oversight should be routine, not exceptional. As we wrap up this analysis, remember that this fight is far from over. The radical left will continue pushing these destructive policies in every institution they can capture. Our response must be sustained, principled, and uncompromising in defense of women's rights and athletic fairness. Stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stay active in this fight. Subscribe to channels like this one that will continue covering these issues when the mainstream media ignores them. Share this content with friends and family who need to understand what's at stake. The battle for the soul of American athletics is happening right now, and patriots like you are the key to victory. Together, we can restore sanity, safety, and fairness to women's sports and preserve the opportunities that Title IX was designed to protect. Thanks for watching Signal 76, and remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share this video with everyone who needs to see it. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight, patriots.